Close to being over? Honestly, I don't know, John. I'm trying to figure that out now. What if we don't catch Sullivan this time? What if he gets away on us? What if he already has? I think I'll be better about Maria. She's been gone a long time. I stopped, took a breath. I don't think it was my fault. I couldn't have done anything differently when she was shot. Ah, said Sampson. Ah, I said. But you're not completely sure, are you? You're still not convinced. Not 100%. Then I laughed. Maybe if we do catch him tonight, maybe if I blow his brains out, then we'll definitely be even. That's why we're out here, Sugar? To blow his brains out? There was a knock against the car's side window, and I went for my gun. Chapter 102. What the hell is he doing here? Sampson asked. None other than Tony Molino was standing next to the car, on my side. What the hell was he doing out here in Montauk? I slowly lowered the window, hoping to find out, to get an answer, maybe a whole bunch of answers. I could have been Sully, he said, with his head cocked to one side. You'd both be dead if I was. No, you'd be dead, Sampson said. He gave Molino a slow smile and showed off his Glock. I saw you coming up from behind about 2 minutes ago. So did Alex. I hadn't, but it was good to know that Sampson still had my back, that somebody did, because maybe I was starting to lose my focus a little, and that could get you shot, or worse. Molino was rubbing his hands together. Cold as shit out here tonight. He waited, then repeated himself. I said it's frickin' frigid, freezing cold out here. Hop in, I told him. Come on inside. You promise not to shoot us in the back? Sampson said. Molino raised both hands and looked either puzzled or alarmed. Sometimes it was hard to tell with him. I don't even carry a weapon, fellas. Never did in my life. Maybe you ought to, the friends you keep, Sampson said. Something to think about, brother. Okay, brother, said Molino, with a mean little laugh that made me rethink who he was. He opened the car door and slid down into the back seat. The question was still on the table. Why had he shown up here, and what did he want? He's not coming, I said, once he'd shut the rear door on the cold. Is that right? Nah, he's not coming, said Molino. Never was. You warn him? I asked. I was watching Molino in the rearview mirror. His eyes narrowed and showed extreme nervousness, something uncomfortable, something not right. I didn't have to warn him. Sully's self-reliance, takes care of himself just fine. His voice was low, almost a whisper. I'll bet, I said. So what happened, Anthony? Asked Sampson. Where's your boy now? Why are you here? Molino's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I didn't quite catch what he said this time. Neither did Sampson. You have to speak up, he turned around and said. You hear me? See how it works? You have to get your voice up to a certain volume. He killed John Maggione Jr. tonight, said Molino. Kidnapped him, then carved him up. That's been a long time coming. There was complete silence in the car. I doubt there was anything he could have said that would have surprised me more. I'd felt earlier that maybe we'd been set up, and we had been. How did you hear about it? I finally asked. I live in the neighborhood. Brooklyn's like being in a small town sometimes. Always been that way. Besides, Sully called me when it was done. He wanted to share. Sampson shifted all the way around to face him. So Sullivan's not coming here to collect his family. Isn't he afraid for them? I was still watching Tony Molino in the rearview. I thought maybe I knew what he was going to say next. This isn't his family, he said. He doesn't even know who they are. Who's in the house, then? I don't know who they are. Central Casting. A family that might look like Sully's. You work for him? I asked Molino. No, but he's been a good friend. I was the one afraid of getting my face messed up in school, not him. Sully always protected me, so I helped him. I'd do it again. Hell, I helped him kill his crazy old man. Why'd you come out here? I asked him next. That one's easy. He told me to. Why? I asked. You'll have to ask him. Maybe because he likes to take a bow after a job well done. He does that, you know. Takes a bow. You don't want to see it. I already have, I told him. Molino opened the back door of the car, nodded his head to us, and then he was gone into the night. And so I knew was the butcher. Chapter 103. What's that old line, new line, whatever it is? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans? I went back to Washington that night because I wanted to see the kids, and because of Nana Mama, and because I had patients who depended on me and were scheduled for the next day. Nana has always preached that it's important for me to be helping people. She calls it my curse. She's probably right. I could clearly see Michael Sullivan's face, his little bow, and it killed me that he was still out there somewhere. According to the FBI, the mob had already put $1 million price tag on his head, and another $1 million on his family. I still had a suspicion that he might be an FBI or police informant, and that one or the other was helping to protect him, but I didn't know that for sure, and maybe I never would. On one of the nights after Sullivan escaped, a school night for the kids, I sat out on the sun porch and played rock and roll on the piano for Janny and Damon. I played until it was almost 10. Then I talked to the kids about their mother. It was time. Chapter 104. I'm not sure why I needed to tell them about Maria now, but I wanted the kids to have some more of the truth about her. Maybe I wanted them to have the closure that I couldn't get myself. I had never lied about Maria to the kids, but I had held back, and no, I had lied about one thing. I'd told Damon and Janny that I wasn't with Maria when she was shot, but that I got to St. Anthony's before she died, and we'd had a few last words. The reason was that I didn't want to have to tell them details that I could never get out of my own head. The sound of the gunshots that felled Maria. The sharp intake of her breath the instant she was hit. The way she slid from my arms to the sidewalk. Then the unforgettable sight of blood pouring from Maria's chest, and my realization that the wounds were fatal. I could still remember it with nightmare clarity more than 10 years later. "I've been thinking about your mom lately," I said that night on the porch. "I've been thinking about her a lot. You guys probably know that already." The kids were gathered around close, suspecting this wasn't one of our usual talks. She was a special person in so many ways. So many ways, Damon and Janny. Her eyes were alive and always honest. She was a listener, and that's usually a sign of a good person. I think it is anyway. She loved to smile and to make other people smile if she possibly could. She used to say, "Here's a cup of sadness and here's a cup of joy. Which do you choose?" She almost always chose the cup of joy. "Almost always?" asked Janny. "Almost always. Think about it, Janelle. You're smart. She chose me, didn't she? All the cute boys she could have had, she chose this puss, this dour personality." Janelle and Damon smiled. Then Damon said, "This is because the one who killed her is back? Why we're talking about our mother now?" "That's part of it, Day. But lately I realized I had unfinished business with her. And with the two of you. That's why we're talking, okay?" Damon and Janelle listened in silence, and I talked for a long while. Eventually I choked up. I think it was the first time I'd let them see me cry about Maria. I loved her so much. Loved your mother like she was a physical part of me. I still do, I guess. Still do, I know. "Because of us?" Damon asked. "It's partly our fault, isn't it?" "What do you mean, sweetheart? I'm not sure that I follow you," I said to Damon. "We remind you of her, don't we? We remind you of Mom every day. Every morning when you see us. You remember that she's not here. Isn't that right?" I shook my head. Maybe there's some little bit of truth in that. But you remind me in a good way, the best way. Trust me on that. It's all good." They waited for me to talk some more, and they didn't take their eyes off me, as if I might suddenly run away on them. "Lots of changes are happening in our lives," I said. "We have Allie here now. Nana's getting older. I'm seeing patients again." "You like it?" Damon asked. "Being a psychologist?" "I do. So far." "So far. That's so you, Daddy," said Janny. I snorted out a laugh, but I didn't go fishing for a compliment about what Janny had said. Not that I was completely averse to compliments, but there was a time for everything, and this wasn't it. I remember that when I'd read Bill Clinton's autobiography, I couldn't help thinking that when he was confessing to the hurt he'd caused his wife and daughter, he couldn't seem to resist looking for forgiveness, too, and even hugs from the reader. He just couldn't resist. Maybe because his need for love is so great. And maybe that's where his empathy and compassion comes from. Then I finally did the hardest thing. I told Janny and Damon what had happened to Maria. I told my children the truth as I knew it. I shared most of the details of Maria's death, her murder, and I told them that I had seen it happen, been with her when she died, felt her last breath on this earth, heard her last words. When I was done, when I couldn't talk anymore, Janny whispered, "Watch the river, how it flows, Daddy. The river's truth." That had been my mantra for the kids when they were little and Maria wasn't around. I'd walk them by the Anacostia River or the Potomac and make them look at it, the water, and say, "Watch the river. The river is truth." Or at least as close as we'll ever get to it. Chapter 105. I was feeling strangely emotional and vulnerable, and I guess maybe alive these days. It was both a good and a bad thing. I had breakfast with Nana Mama at around 5:30 or so almost every morning. Then I jogged to my office, changed clothes, and started my sessions as early as 6:30. Kim Stafford was my first patient on Mondays and Thursdays. It was always a hard thing to keep personal feelings out of the sessions, at least for me, or maybe I was just out of practice. On the other hand, some of my colleagues had always struck me as too clinical, too reserved and distant. What was any patient, any human being supposed to make of that? "Oh, it's okay if I have the effect of a turnip. I'm a therapist." I needed to do this my way, with warmth at times, with lots of feeling and compassion rather than empathy. I needed to break the rules, to be unorthodox. Like confronting Jason Stemple at his station house and trying to punch that scum's lights out. That's what I call professional. I had a break in my schedule until noon, so I decided to check in with Monty Donnelly at Quantico. She was doing some research on a theory of mine about the butcher. I hadn't said much more than hello when Monty interrupted. "I have something for you, Alex. I think you're going to like this. It's your idea anyway, your theory." Monty told me that she'd used my notes and tracked down news about Sullivan's wife through a mob soldier who was in the Witness Protection Program and now living in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. "I followed the trail you set up, and you were right on. It led me to a guy who was at Sullivan's wedding, which was small, as you might expect. The pal from Brooklyn you told me about, Anthony Molino, he was there. Apparently Sullivan didn't want many people to know about his private life. His own mother wasn't invited, and his father was dead, as you know." "Yeah, killed by his son and a couple of pals. What did you find out about Sullivan's wife?" "Well, it's interesting stuff, not what you'd expect, either. She's originally from Colts Neck, New Jersey, and she was a first-grade teacher before she met Sullivan. How about that? Salvatore Pistelli, the witness protection guy, said she was a sweet girl. Said Sullivan was looking for a good mother for his kids. Touching, huh, Alex? Our psycho hitman has a soft spot. The wife's name was Caitlin Haney. Her family's still living in Colts Neck." That same day, we had a tap set up on the phones of